love. My name is Gina Lee, and welcome to the Go Gina podcast. If you've been here before, welcome back. And if this is your first time seeing me, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. In today's episode, we are going to be breaking down helping people who will not help themselves. What I'm referring to is helping people who end up putting themselves back in the same situation, whether that's financially or emotionally. These people want your help, gladly accept it, and then you're hoping that after getting the help, they won't put themselves back in that same situation, whatever situation that may be. For example, I've had friends that I have helped out in the past. We're going to use a financial example here, but I have friends that I've helped out in the past and I've given them money whenever they were really struggling and kind of in the pits and didn't have the money for rent or whatever they had going on. And I assumed, but also hoped that by giving them that money, it would get them back up on their feet and then they would be careful to not end up in that same spot again because we all make mistakes. That's inevitable. We're going to make mistakes. But these type of people I'm referring to will end up back in that situation and likely expect your help as a result, even if there are ways to prevent it. They're basically using you because they know that you will help them. It's absolutely important to help people who are in need, and you should never feel bad for that. But if someone is constantly putting themselves back in the same situation after you're providing them with help and also probably advice, it is very, very frustrating. We're going to be breaking down why people do this and how to stop putting yourself in an enabler situation. Let's just go ahead and get into things. So, the first topic we're going to be covering is why people resist change or why they keep putting themselves back in that same situation. We're going to break this down a little bit here. There's a few different reasons why someone might throw themselves back into a bad situation. Maybe that struggle is all they've ever known and they're comfortable in it and they're scared of what their life is going to look like whenever they get out of that struggle. Using relationships for an example, but for people who constantly pick these really shitty partners who treat them like shit and go back to them over and over again, and maybe you're like, I don't understand why this person keeps going back. But it's a comfortability in that struggle. It's something they've known for a very, very long time. They could be scared of failure or the unknown. Like comfortability, we tend to stay in the same spot because we don't know what is on the other side. But if someone is not making a change, it may not be that they don't want to make that change, but that they're terrified of what their life might look like if they do make that change. This one, I'm more so referring to the emotional side of things. Thinking of someone who keeps going back to a partner who is treating them like shit. In addition to the comfortability, they are also probably just terrified of failing without that person or not knowing who they are without that person. And that same thing can be said for people who are not wanting to make changes. They may not know themselves without that characteristic or that part of their lives. And because that's all they've ever known, they can't see what things would look like outside of that. For some people, it really is a lack of desire to change. I'm going to use a financial example here, but I think that enabling goes into this a little bit. So, if someone is always putting themselves in a bad spot financially and there's always someone to catch them and help them, they have become reliant on that and also expectant of that help. So they don't really feel the desire to change because they know they will always be okay because there will always be someone to catch them. The lack of true desire to change can be a result of many factors, though. It may be because they can't envision what their lives would look like in the future if they were to change. But like I said, there's all kinds of different reasons for that lack of true desire to change. There's also quite a few psychological factors that go into this. And I see in a lot of the people in my life, and honestly, a lot of the people I see on the internet that I may have known when I was younger, there is that psychological factor dating back to their childhood. A lot of people repeat patterns from their childhood or learned behaviors that they're not even aware of. We're going to use another emotional slash relationship example for this one. Let's say it's a woman who keeps going back to a partner who treats her like shit. If that woman grew up with a mother who put up with that kind of behavior, it may be all that she knows, and she may think that that's okay. The same kind of thing can go for the financial side of things as well. So if the person grew up with a parent or parents who were always very bad off financially and always had someone to catch them, they may expect that in their adult lives because that is what they learned from the get go. There is a thing called learned helplessness where you can kind of repeat that from something you learned when you were very, very young. I think a lot of the patterns in people's lives do tend to come back to what they learned whenever they were very little. Our environment shapes us a lot as people, and I feel like a lot of times people don't give that enough credit when in reality, that is where we get a lot of our core beliefs and how we treat other people. Now, let's get into the you side of things, baby doll. If you are the person who is always providing the help and wanting the person to do better, but they are not making the effort to change, this part's about you, okay? We're going to be breaking down the frustration of going through that. If you are the person constantly providing support, it is likely that you are going to be feeling obviously very frustrated, but also very drained emotionally and maybe financially, depending on your situation, from constantly offering that person that support. I almost feel like when you're helping someone over and over again and they're not taking the initiative to change, that it feels like all the effort that you're making to help the person change or make better decisions is wasted, that you were doing all of that for no reason. I'm not saying that that's the truth. I've just experienced that in my own life. And I've definitely felt like after helping people out over and over again with the same shit, that there was really no point for me to do that in the first place because they were just going to do the same thing over and over again. And I'm not talking about someone doing the same thing one, two, or three times. I'm talking about an incredibly repetitive cycle, say 10, 15, 20 times in a row, and they end up in the same spot because they're putting themselves there. I also want to talk about, when does helping someone like that become enabling them? If they know that you're always going to be there to catch them if they're putting themselves back in that same bad situation, they're probably super comfortable in that fact and they know that you're going to be there. So walking back into that same bad situation doesn't seem like that big of a deal. If you weren't there to catch them or help them, it would be a lot more difficult for them to walk back into that same shitty situation because there isn't going to be that parachute waiting for them when they jump out and need the help. It's important to recognize when it is time to take a step back. If you are constantly helping somebody over and over with something and they are always putting themselves back in that same shitty situation, whatever it may be, you are most likely feeling super drained and frustrated emotionally. If you remove yourself as that enabler, a couple different things are going to happen here. Either they are going to have a little bit of a wake up call and realize, okay, I need to get my shit together. I can't keep putting myself in this situation because no one is going to be here to catch me and I need to do shit myself and figure my own stuff out myself. Or they're going to find someone else to be the enabler instead of you. Either way, you're pulling yourself out of the situation, which is saving you a lot of time and frustration. Now, let's talk about how to handle these situations. This is a very tricky thing here because when you are close with someone and you are constantly helping or enabling them and you pull that support away, they may feel a loss of love or that you don't care about them or that maybe you're a bitch. I don't know. They are most likely going to be upset though because you are pulling that away from them. But the important thing to remember though is that you are helping them in the long run by taking a step back and allowing them to have the space to grow, of course, but for the real world to also just smack them upside the face a little bit because sometimes people need that. Sometimes people are too comfortable having everyone else around them provide for them or catch them whenever they fall that they don't know what it's like to do it on their own. And that's a really important skill for people to learn, is how to take care of things themselves and how to handle themselves without having to fall on somebody else and use them. I would recommend encouraging self-reflection instead of just giving them those solutions. So having a talk with them about that cycle that they are constantly throwing themselves into, maybe trying to understand why they keep putting themselves in that situation and bringing it to their attention that they are always putting themselves back in that situation. So understanding together what the issue is instead of just giving them help that they are going to take and need again in a couple weeks because they won't change their actions. They're probably going to be upset with you for pulling away a little bit. I would let them know before you cut the cord on whatever kind of support you're offering them, letting them know that you do really love and care about them, but by providing them with that help, whether that be financially, emotionally, whatever, that you are prohibiting their self growth because they don't know how to do things on their own, whatever that may be. Tough love is a really difficult thing to practice because we always want to be there and help and support the people we care about, but it becomes a little bit toxic when someone is partially using you and they're also stifling their own growth and their own future. They're not getting the necessary skills they need to be a successful adult if they are constantly taking that from other people. If they're using other people's success and whatever they've got going on, whether it's good advice, and instead of figuring things out on their own, they're going to continue to do that. And if they lose those people in their lives, they are going to be in a really shitty situation. So it's good to encourage self reflection and then let them know that, hey, I'm going to pull back a little bit. I'm not going to help you out financially anymore because even though I do really want to see you do well and I want you to be good financially, every time I help you, you put yourself back in the same shitty situation and you aren't making the effort to change. So I feel like I should take a step back and let you figure out what this is like without me here. That's not to say, leave them, don't be friends with them, or don't hang out with them, but just pull back a little bit. Be there to offer them a little pat on the back or a good job if they are going and making those changes. It's important to acknowledge and praise a little bit whenever people are making changes in their lives that are going to better them for the future. That tough love can be very, very beautiful and tough at first. You can soften up a little bit, but don't fall back into that old cycle and just let the person know that you want the best for them and enabling them is not providing them with that. In my own life, I really have learned that you can't help people who won't help themselves. You can go out of your way and over the top as much as you want to, but unless someone is willing to make the changes that they need to themselves, you're just wasting your breath or your money or your emotional state, whatever. You're wasting all of that. And when you could be putting it back towards yourself, if the person you're giving it to doesn't really value it or doesn't make an effort to make changes for the future. I used to feel really bad about pulling back from people and not providing them with that same support, whatever that may be. And then I realized whenever I had someone kind of pull away from me, because I was putting myself in the same bad situation that I needed that. I needed the wake up call. I needed the cold water in my face. I needed all of that to understand what I needed to do to stop putting myself in that situation. By constantly providing people with that support, you aren't allowing them to fall and crash a little bit like they need to. They're never going to take the initiative to grow if you're always there to catch them. So if you step back, they're either going to find a new enabler and that's not your problem, or they're going to grow a ton as a person and make those better decisions for the future. I want to talk a little bit more about both people here, but if you are the person who is constantly putting yourself back in the same situation, I would encourage a lot of that self reflection for yourself. So even if you don't have anyone saying it to you, I would take a minute and just think, why am I always doing this to myself? Is this something that I learned when I was younger? Is this a learned behavior? Am I comfortable in this kind of pain? Am I comfortable in this amount of stress? Is this what I know best? And what can I do to move past this? And for the people that are struggling with being that enabler or that over provider, even though it is difficult to take a step back and stop enabling out of fear that the other person might feel that you don't love or care about them as much, and that's why you're stepping back. I want you to know that by stepping back and letting them take things into their own hands a little bit, you are providing them with way more than you would be if you keep enabling that cycle. They're going to be forced to grow a little bit if you step back. And that is what we want from people, especially people who keep putting themselves in these shitty situations. We want them to grow and we want them to be better and to expand. But by helping them, if they won't help themselves, you are just hurting yourself and causing a lot of distress for yourself. It's a difficult thing to go through for both parties here, but it is possible to come out on the other side and to stop exhibiting those same behaviors. Communication is one of the most fantastic and important things we have as human beings. Communication and a good conversation can change the course of one's life if done properly. Maybe not at first, but encouraging that self reflection can allow someone to maybe see things in a different way that they weren't seeing before. Sometimes people don't even realize that they're putting themselves back in that same shitty situation, or they're not as conscious of it as, of course, someone is on the outside. So communicate with them, offer them support, but not in the way that you are giving them currently if they keep putting themselves back in that same shitty situation. I know this was a little bit of an aggressive topic for the podcast here today, but I have just been thinking a lot about this recently, and I wanted to share this with you guys because I know a lot of people have been in this situation, and sometimes we don't know how to get out of that cycle or how to help someone get themselves out of the cycle. If you guys have any questions for me on this topic, I know this isn't as long of an episode as it usually is, so if you want to leave me a comment or shoot me a message on Instagram or Snapchat, I link all of those down below. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode for today. If there is a specific podcast topic y'all would like me to cover, just let me know. I appreciate each and every one of you so, so much, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.